You are probably the most obedient group of people this size that has ever entered Jersey City. So we say thank you very much for being in your seats. It's now my pleasure to invite you to stand and to sing song number 150, Reaching Out, Matthew 9:37 and 38. What a marvelous gift from God it is. We all have one. It's a bit larger in men than it is in women. What is it? It's in your mouth. It's your tongue. A small muscle, a little over 3 inches long. We do so many things with it. You can whisper with it. You can yell with it. You can swallow your food with its help. And it's so versatile. You can stick it out. Over in Tibet, they stick out the tongue, some of them, and it's a sign of friendship and greeting. Don't you try that here. It stays out of the way of your teeth when you chew, well, most of the time. It is an arduous job trying to control the tongue. Well, James had something to say about it. Let's see what he had to say. Let's turn to James in our Bibles or iPads. That's the 3rd chapter of his book, and we're going to read 5 through 10. So too, the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it makes great brags. See how small a fire it takes to set a great forest ablaze. The tongue is also a fire. The tongue represents a world of unrighteousness among our body members, for it defiles all the body and sets the whole course of life on fire. And it is set on fire by Gehenna. For every kind of wild animal and bird and reptile and sea creature is to be tamed and has been tamed by humans. But no human can tame the tongue. It is unruly and injurious, full of deadly poison. With it we praise Jehovah the Father, and yet with it we curse men who have come into existence in the likeness of God. Out of the same mouth come blessing and cursing. In our imperfect state, we can't completely control it. Or we try, and we must try, but we just can't get the job completely done. But we're not going to give up. We're going to keep trying. We're going to watch, though, what we have to say, what comes out of the mouth, what rolls as a result of the tongue. We're going to be very careful. And we know that we must rein in a runaway tongue and curb its wagging. Although blessing and cursing can come out of the mouth by the use of the tongue, you will only hear blessings out of the mouths of the speakers and participants today. These Christians have bridled their tongues. Thank God for that. Today, we are going to consider things that are, now you want to jot these down because we're going to mention them several times through the day. Here they are. True. Things of serious concern. Righteous, chaste, lovable, well spoken of, virtuous, praiseworthy, good, and acceptable. The tongue will work good for us today, not bad. So we say, sit still, and may your ears keep up with the tongues of all of our participants. And as you know, in our September JW broadcasting program, Brother Splain told us that the move of Bethel family members to the World Headquarters facility in Warwick, New York, is in progress. It is already a bustling complex with so many relocated and caring for their assignments. This represents a historic change since the World Headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses had been located in Brooklyn, New York, for over 100 years. We're all happy, and it's good for us who live there. It's such a beautiful place indeed, and so restful. All of us feel like we have been able to add years to our lives. We can hear birds sing, crickets at night, frogs. Every now and then there's an eagle that flies over. Bear and snakes. But we've been warned, watch out. We know what to do, and we're just enjoying ourselves as much as we possibly can. Well, we now invite you to enjoy a video presentation about the history of headquarters in Brooklyn and the move to Warwick. So we say enjoy. What you see and hear is, look at your notes, true.
Why are we here at Bethel today in New York City? Why did Pastor Russell leave Pittsburgh? To expand the ministry worldwide. But look at it today. The satisfaction to see and the blessing of seeing the work expand to the ends of the earth and God's will being done.
In 1909, Jehovah led his people in making a move that would become an indelible part of our spiritual heritage. For years, the Pennsylvania location had been adequate for the work of spreading the good news. But as time went on, challenges arose.
Pittsburgh's reputation was one of steel and industry, not really one of religion and faith. The organization at that time was trying to get the preaching work accomplished, and it wasn't really well suited in Pittsburgh. So they struggled to find a city that would work for them. And one of the cities that they came across was Brooklyn. It was very famous for its pastors and its churches. It was actually nicknamed the City of Churches, and that was a good reputation to springboard the preaching work from. They were trying to preach the good news to the entire earth. But with so few Bible students, how could they possibly do it? And then they realized the cultural base that existed in New York City was broad. And so they felt that this put them in the perfect position to preach to people and have them help the Bible students take the message back to their homelands. Brooklyn, just far and above, was the obvious choice to them.
Officially, Brooklyn Bethel opened its doors in April 1909. These were years of tremendous activity leading up to 1914. They also proved to be times of test. The United States had declared war on Germany. From March through July of 1918, 8 different brothers who were taking the lead at that time were arrested, sentenced, and taken off to federal penitentiary.
The executive committee at headquarters consulted with other brothers. It was decided to sell the Brooklyn Tabernacle and to close the Bethel home.
So we moved here in 1909, and within 10 years, Brooklyn Bethel was closed. The headquarters operations were moved back to Pittsburgh. In the year 1919, when the brothers were finally released from prison, Brother Rutherford apprehended rapidly that there's still great interest in the work, and Jehovah is still blessing and backing us. We need to get back, organize it, and get on with the work that has been started.
So should they start from scratch and build a Bethel there in Allegheny, or should they utilize the property that they already owned in Brooklyn? They wanted to see if that was actually Jehovah's will. So what Judge Rutherford did is he asked Brother C.A. Wise, who was his vice president, we need to do a test to see if Jehovah is going to bless this direction. During the wartime, any raw materials, paper, fuel, all of those things are regulated because the war effort is going on. So this was a perfect test to see if they would enable the brothers to get coal. He sent him back here and he said, don't just get a little coal, get enough so that it is obvious that if we get this coal, that it only is by Jehovah's blessing.
Brother Rutherford directed Brother Wise to order 500 tons of coal. And what was the outcome? When he applied to the authorities, he was granted a certificate to obtain 500 tons of coal, enough to care for their needs for years to come.
So in 1919, September, I believe, is when they actually moved back from Allegheny to Brooklyn.
Once it was determined that Brooklyn, New York would be the New World headquarters, how would Jehovah use this new location to advance the preaching work?
Well, we were dependent back then on commercial printeries. Brother Rutherford wondered whether we could print the Watchtower ourselves. And so a printing press was obtained and a printery was set up. And in time, book printing began. Outside commercial companies thought that we would never be capable of printing and binding books. But the brothers applied themselves, learned, and with the support of the Lord, they got it going.
It was so evident that Jehovah was using Brooklyn Bethel. All the printing, binding was done for the world here in Brooklyn.
After that, the organization took in brothers under the direction of the governing body to come and learn what they could in Brooklyn and take it with them back to their countries and see what they could do about lighting the load a little as far as the printing and distribution was concerned.
Soon after I got to Bethel in Japan, I worked on the web press. We always looked up to Brooklyn as our big brother. And we always looked to them for direction. Anytime we were able to come back to the United States on a brief visit, I would always make sure to see what was new and to talk with the brothers, and the brothers were always very helpful.
So you saw how Jehovah used this place to get the spiritual food out to the Worldwide Association of the Brothers.
It is clear that Jehovah had blessed the advancement of the printing and distribution work in Brooklyn Bethel. But to further share the truth globally in a way that would truly touch hearts, other challenges needed to be addressed.
Zechariah chapter 8, verse 23 says that 10 men out of all the languages of the nations will grab hold of the skirt of a man who is a Jew. Now that's a lot of languages, but for every person to understand, they have to hear it in their language.
Though we were translating into many languages, many of these were not simultaneous with English. Some of them lagged behind for many months. And of course, there were many languages who didn't have any literature at all. And so the governing body saw this situation and they created the Department, Translation Services. Some of the early languages were translated right here in Brooklyn. Eventually, translation work was moved out to the branches where they speak those languages.
The 20th century saw many technological advancements. How did Jehovah guide his servants at Brooklyn Bethel to make progressive use of these advancements to further the preaching work to all the languages of the nations?
Well, the challenges of developing a computer that could actually type and compose in all of those languages were enormous in the late 70s and early 80s. I think the brothers could see that technology was changing. Things were changing from letterpress to offset printing. Things were going from black and white to color. So I think all the pieces began to be there to look at the idea of maps. I kind of liken it to our moonshot. In other words, can you get there and back? Jehovah provided the right people at the right time. People who had previous expertise with building computer systems, people who had some expertise with languages. And what has always fascinated me is Jehovah's use of the timing of when to use the technologies.
Jehovah put Bethel in Brooklyn, and he would know at any given time, strategically, geographically, where would be the best place for his world headquarters. And for decades, it was Brooklyn.
In 1971, when you looked out over the East River, you know what you saw along the shoreline? A whole row of freighters. And then the fact that we had our printery just a few blocks away revealed why it was beneficial to have Bethel here in Brooklyn. Now, you look out over the East River, what do you see? It's a park. You have swimming pools there. It's full of people. The purpose has changed, and the reasons for our being here have, in many ways, disappeared.
Because of the way things are developing in the world, and because of Brooklyn and New York City being where it is in the world scene, it's time for us to get things moved out of Brooklyn and to a new world headquarters where we can be even more fruitful.
In 2011, Jehovah was again leading his people in another historic move.
We'd like to let you know that the governing body has decided that if the approvals are received for the Warwick project, we will be moving completely out of Brooklyn. The world headquarters will be relocated at Warwick.
When it was announced the plans of establishing world headquarters in what is going to be in Warwick, it just seemed like it was so far away. We may not even live to that. But the time has passed quite quickly, and now it's virtually on our doorstep. It's happening.
We have seen that Jehovah can use any location. We have beautiful facilities now, Walk Hill, Patterson, soon Warwick. Beautiful facilities that Jehovah will use to the full, just as he used Brooklyn.
And it becomes so evident that this is not an organization of men. We're not dedicated to a building or to a city. We are dedicated to Jehovah. And when you sense his direction in this matter of relocating and doing things differently, you can't help but, okay, we back off the sentimentality and let's go ahead and do the work as Jehovah's outlined for us today.
I've always concluded when it works, Jehovah's behind it. So Warwick worked beautifully, and if you ever get to Warwick and you see Warwick as it is now, you'll say this is the place that Jehovah wanted us to be.
Jehovah had Brooklyn in place, some parts of it for over 100 years. And it served so well as a base for the governing body, as a base for printing and providing spiritual food worldwide, as a base for direction for congregations worldwide. And now Jehovah has something else in mind. With the way things turned out, it wasn't a man or a group of men who back in the early 1900s said, you know what we need to do? We'll stay here about 100 years, and then we'll have a place up north of the city, and we'll move there and we'll sell all these buildings, and then it'll be a real boost to the work. No man or a group of men did that. But Jehovah and Christ Jesus, they direct the brothers at the right time in the right place to make the decisions that may seem for the present, just for the present, but Jehovah sees the end from the very beginning.
Yes, World Headquarters in Brooklyn has been the hub of our global preaching work throughout the 20th century. Despite many twists and turns, Jehovah has used this location to advance his will in unprecedented ways. While we think back fondly on all that was accomplished here, we know going forward, there is only more to come.
That was most interesting, but save your hands, there's more coming. So we're not looking back on Brooklyn, but we are moving forward, one step closer to our future hope. And as you know, I just love acronyms and abbreviations. PC, WC, WWDC, LDC. But what does CPC stand for? Well, in the video just seen, you got a glimpse of the beautiful new little city built on a lake in Warwick. So the CPC helped make that happen. What does the CPC stand for? CPC stands for Construction Project Committee. Lock that in. Though that committee lived and breathed the Warwick project for a number of years, it was really a governing body directed project. However, the Construction Project Committee was given the latitude to make many of the detailed oriented decisions on their own. Now, how did this assignment affect these brothers? Did they give it serious concern? Let's pay attention to a pre-recorded interview of the CPC conducted by Brother Harold Corcoran, a helper for the publishing committee of the governing body. The video is entitled Building for the Future.
The construction of the new world headquarters at Warwick, New York was indeed a historic project. The Construction Project Committee certainly saw evidence of Jehovah's blessing and guidance upon them. But they also realized that he was building more than just a new facility. He was building qualities that are so necessary for his people. And this we'll see as we talk to our CPC members. At this time, it'd be good for us to introduce the Construction Project Committee. We'll do so alphabetically. We have Brother Ken Corrin, Brother Kenneth Chernish, Brother Richard Devine, Brother Enrique Ford, and Brother Troy Snyder. One of the first questions we'd like to ask you is, when you first got this assignment and you learned of the scope and all the work that was involved and the established completion date, what was your first reaction? And we'll start with Brother Richard Devine.
Well, I was excited, but overwhelmed. Overwhelmed not just by the size of the project and the expedited schedule, but especially by the level of trust that the governing body had put in the five of us. I was used to recommendations being reviewed by multiple layers of oversight, decisions taking weeks or months to arrive at. And here the governing body told us that we were to report only to the publishing committee. And once a budget was established, to use our best judgment, carry out the work, come back to them for direction only if we exceeded our budget.
Brother Troy Snyder, what would you like to add?
The emotions varied, from being scared to excited. And like any new assignment, you think how much work is going to be needed to accomplish it. But then when really meditating on the scope of the job and the time frame that was desired, you started to feel inadequate, and there was just no way you could do it. But then you started to realize that Jehovah was behind you. He was the one who's directing matters. He had confidence that we could do it. And so as a result, you knew you could really lean on him and look at him as a fellow worker, and that really helped set the pace.
Brother Ford.
First thing I realized is that if this project was going to be successful, it was going to be because of Jehovah's Holy Spirit. And that was clear because from a human perspective, it was literally impossible. But it was what Jehovah had asked us to do. And the other thing that occurred to me is that Jehovah wasn't going to bless our standard approach of developing projects.
Brother Ken Corrin?
We were living and working on the Nigeria branch construction project at Igiduma out in the beautiful Africa bush. So my first feeling was, did they dial the wrong number? But within 30 minutes, we returned the phone call. We were very happy to accept the privilege to go. As far as the completion date, if we would have known all the details at that time of how Warwick would be constructed, where would the faith have been? So it wasn't our assignment at that time to know all the details. It was our assignment to have faith in the invisible one, Jehovah, and move forward with that conviction.
Brother Ken Chernish, what would you like to add?
I could not believe that Jehovah would put that much trust in me. I'll never forget going to bed that night, laying down, eyes wide open. They remained open all night long, just praying to Jehovah. We didn't have construction documents. We didn't have permits. We didn't even have design on some of the buildings. From a secular perspective, it couldn't be done in 4 years. And I realized I just needed to have the faith to follow Jehovah's lead and to work with these brothers, and that schedule would become attainable.
When you first started working as a committee, were there any challenges on learning how to work together as a committee? And if so, how did you address them? And we'll start with Brother Ford.
I remember a visit from one governing body member, and he made the statement that they wanted this not to be a Bethel project, not to be an RBC project, but to be a CPC project, a totally different approach. So that assured me that the governing body deliberately wanted us to blend together these 5 different approaches and personalities.
Brother Richard Devine?
We all brought different paradigms to the table, different ways of thinking, even a different language in some cases. And so it took a while for us to understand each other. And so we really early on decided to try to take advantage of everything that the Brotherhood could offer and try to blend the different approaches to achieve the success that really we were hoping for with Jehovah's blessing. And as time went on, we really began to respect each other and draw close together as a committee and as friends.
What I appreciated was in our meetings, the brothers felt comfortable expressing themselves and their viewpoints, even if it differed from others.
My challenge was lack of Bethel experience, still is. Yet these brothers were so patient with me, so protective of me even, and in caring for me and understanding how much different my background was, the way I went about making decisions, the way I expressed myself. Yet they understood that. I also pray to show honor to these brothers and to take the lead. Do a good job of it sometimes, not so good other times, but have really tried to rely on Jehovah in that way to overcome the challenge.
The biggest challenge for me was myself. I could quickly see why Jehovah had brought the other brothers together with their experience in construction and engineering and business administration and many years at World Headquarters. But I felt apprehensive about my experience and even hesitant sometimes to express myself. But I kept up my spiritual routines, field service and prayer, meditation, so forth. And in time, I realized that I needed to show more personal faith. Well, specifically, to show more faith in not comparing ourselves to others and not neglecting the gifts that we do have to offer Jehovah. So I benefited from every brother on the committee. I'm refined, and I'm very thankful to Jehovah for helping me grow.
It's very commendable, a good example for us. Our next question, given the magnitude of this project and the date that was established for completion, what organizational and logistical challenges did you find most daunting? Brother Devine?
At our peak, we were processing over 11,000 requisition lines a month. We were delivering over 1,000 pallets a week to the site. It was an incredible challenge, and it really would have been impossible without Jehovah's blessing and the hard work of our procurement and purchasing departments.
Designers, by their training and background, are used to planning. They're used to starting a project with the determination of how long would it take to get the design finished and then scheduling forward. So from day one, I realized that if we could not find a way to get the design and construction documents completed very quickly and on time, the project would grind to a halt. So that was very daunting for me.
At that time, the Wallkill project was still in full swing, and they were feeding us volunteers and overseers really at will when we asked for them, but there still weren't going to be enough. We were going to need to do heavy site work simultaneous with building construction. That's not necessarily the best way to go about it. There's a lot of clashes when that happens. It makes workers less productive because it's hard to move around the spaces. We were going to have all 6 major buildings in construction simultaneously. We'd come to find out we were going to need to have 11 cranes swinging in the air. These things, along with 20 telehandlers going around the site, moving this material that Rich talked about, was going to be daunting.
And Brother Ken Corin?
One aspect of my assignment was to work with safety. So it was very daunting in the beginning to imagine how will we provide safety orientation and training to thousands of volunteers coming in. And then what would be the best way to motivate our brothers and sisters on the very serious subject of safety?
And safety is a concern of all of Jehovah's people, no matter what we're doing. Brother Troy Snyder.
We needed the high skill. We needed the friends to come. We needed large amounts, as Brother Chernish mentioned. But how would we care for them? At one point, we grew in an 8-month period over 1,000. And we'd add, what type of rooming would we have for them? How would we care for them spiritually and physically? At one time, we found ourselves with a kitchen and dining room designed for 200 and trying to feed about 1,000 people. We certainly could feel that it was as if Jesus was in that kitchen multiplying the loaves.
Yeah, good support. But now you've enumerated understandable concerns, challenges. Could you give some examples on how those were resolved? And we'll be back to Brother Corin for this one.
We realized that we wanted to move away from any inclination thinking that safety is somehow the first responsibility of a safety department or a safety brother coming around to check on us. We wanted to put forth more effort to teach that safety is an expression of our spirituality. Once we started focusing on that teaching, that there are certain values such as the sanctity of life, we love our brother, we must maintain a good conscience before Jehovah, then the whole subject of safety became very inspiring to work with. It was a real joy. In a practical way, on Sunday afternoon, instead of having a 3-hour safety orientation and training, we developed a series of videos that could be streamed to volunteers. Before they came, several weeks ahead of time, they could watch a video, take notes, watch it again if they wanted to. And what it did is it significantly increased the quality of our safety orientation and training for the entire project.
Enrique Ford.
We realized that we couldn't be paralyzed by fear just because we'd never done something this way before. We had to move forward with faith. An example of that was, as a committee, we made the decision to model the building in 3 dimensions on a computer before we started construction. Now, we had never done that before, and not to speak of doing it on a project of this scale, complexity, with this deadline. But we moved ahead in faith, and Jehovah blessed that effort.
We'd like to develop that a little bit further. You've given us some examples of how Jehovah's Holy Spirit was certainly there, his guidance and his blessing. Could you give us some more examples of that? And we'll start with Brother Chernish.
A lot of decisions that were going to have to be made. What could we self-perform? What would we need to outsource to get done in 4 years? And we would also come to learn through this process that if we stopped, if we prayed, if we talked about it, and if we were all in unison, we would see Jehovah's direction. It was very faith-strengthening, and we would see Jehovah's Spirit work upon the contractors that were working here. They would come to us. We've never swung this many panels on a building in a day. We did 33 today. We're accustomed to doing 16. We would chuckle off on the side. We knew what they were benefiting from. Jehovah, too, was moving their actions because it was his will and his purpose for this to be done. So seeing this level of blessing and Holy Spirit was really faith-strengthening.
Troy Snyder.
Early on, we received a letter from the governing body to our committee reminding us that though they wanted the project done in an expedited fashion, they didn't want it done in a way that hurt the brothers spiritually. And so we started consciously making efforts to adjust one's schedules so that they could attend their meetings, so they could participate in the field ministry. so that they would be able to benefit from all the spiritual programs that Bethel provides and has for us. We're even able to adjust some of our dear sisters' schedules so that they too could keep up their spiritual routine. And every time we did that, it didn't seem logical from a human standpoint, but the project accelerated.
Rich Devine.
Well, I think we've prayed more on this project than any other theocratic project I've ever been involved with, not only as a committee, but every department, every crew would pray together. If we talked about work, we prayed, whether it was technical discussions or anything else, we always prayed. And it really made us feel that Jehovah was a part of our daily work, that we were really fellow workers with him. And we really felt that. But also, I think the most dramatic evidence of Jehovah's Spirit was the manifestation of the fruitage of the Spirit in our brothers and sisters. Despite long work hours, hard working conditions, difficult living conditions, an expedited schedule, you could still see the love, the hope, the joy in the brothers every day. And this really helped me to understand how Jehovah's Spirit was so active here.
What would you like to say to the Bethel family and to the thousands of willing, hardworking volunteers that came from the field to assist you? Perhaps we can start with Ken Corin.
Well, many thousands of years ago, we remember the sacrifice of Abel because out of love, he gave the best he had. So we say thank you to the brothers and sisters who supported the project out in the field, out of love, giving the best they had was often their prayers. Others came physically, giving out of love the best they had. So may all the brothers and sisters remember that this was the reason they shared in the project. And it is something that they and Jehovah can remember for an eternity.
Ken Chernish.
Like Brother Corin said, I would just like to say thank you, and especially to all of the brothers and sisters in the Bethel complexes in the U.S. branch territory. They treated us like a parent would treat a child, so lovingly. They gave us everything we asked for that we needed. The friends out in the field, we've talked about them so much. They turned their lives upside down to come here and work with us. Did they benefit? Absolutely. And we so appreciate how they put up with us, how things changed, the schedules that we imputed upon them to get this work done. We know they benefited as we did, and we'd like to thank them so much.
Rich Devine.
Thank you for sacrificing your money and your time to come and help us. Thank you for interviewing and sending such capable volunteers. Thanks for working in the rain and the snow. Thanks for enduring long bus rides and living in hotels. Thanks for being our friends, and thanks for the wonderful spirit that you showed through the whole project.
Enrique Ford.
As we had opportunity to eat with the volunteers, work with them, travel with them, it became evident that every one of them had a story as to how they got here. Sometimes it was the supportive mate that would pick up the slack while they were here on the project. Other times they talked about their children and how their children encouraged them, supported them so that they could be here. There were even some brothers that told us about how the entire congregation supported them financially, as well as covering their assignments back home, because the congregation wanted to sponsor someone since they couldn't come. So we just want to thank all of those volunteers and the support that made it possible for them to come.
Troy Snyder.
We love you very much. And Jehovah united us as a family in a period of time to accomplish something for his glory. And I think we personally would love to be able to express our appreciation and reward each person for what they've done. But we take such comfort in knowing that Jehovah has seen their love, he's seen their work, and he will reward them, and that will be a rich blessing.
Thank you for those heartfelt expressions. And in conclusion, we just have a few brief comments. We have heard, and rightfully so, the governing body offer warm commendation and appreciation to all of you on this committee, as well as to the thousands who have supported the project. And at this time, we'd also like to take this opportunity to thank your wives for their hard work on this project, their patience, their endurance, and their absolute support that they gave. It's most appreciated, and I know you appreciate their support, and we do too. So the lessons that we all learned, thanks to you from this project, thanks to Jehovah most of all, will benefit us now, but right on into the future, as your comments have alluded to. So once again, thank you for taking the time to share these observations. Thank you for your hard work. And it will be a privilege for all of us to continue to work shoulder to shoulder with the one who constructed all things, Jehovah God.
There was one word that stood out in this interview, and it was the word daunting. And of course, that is a beautiful word. It's a good word. But when you see what was accomplished in the past 4 years, you'll see why we're going to change the word daunting to amazing. So lock that one in. I mentioned earlier that this was a governing body directed project. CPC was indeed a unique way to expedite the construction. However, all that was accomplished on the Warwick project is a result of the base of experience and, of course, all the wonderful training that had been laid for the last several decades by the Design Build Department. That's DBD. They did a lot in planning and executing construction projects around the world. And the amazing Warwick project would not have happened in that time frame without the thousands of volunteers, many of whom for years tirelessly assisted regional building committees, RBC. They assisted them to build so many assembly and kingdom halls month after month. And the same is true of all of the volunteers that came and assisted with the monumental expansion of the Walk Hill branch facility. Now, would you, brothers and sisters, like to thank all of these ones who supported two of the largest construction projects to date? I might mention that on Friday, October the 14th, 2016, a new video about moving out of Brooklyn will be posted on JW Broadcasting. You will find it under Latest Videos. At the end of that video, a letter from the governing body is read, sharing sincere appreciation for all those who worked on these two construction projects. It will be posted in English first, with other languages being posted at a later time. Look for the English edition on JW Broadcasting on October the 14th, 2016. For your future or further information, the CPC was dissolved as of September the 29th, 2016. They will all be moving on to other assignments. And we appreciate very much their intense labor of love.